People who grew up with abuse and neglect can slip into a dysfunctional reaction when they feel stressed in a relationship. Some people try to escape. They shut down. They physically leave. They float off into fantasy. Some people react the opposite way by clinging and fearing that they're going to get abandoned. But the trauma reaction I want to talk about today is the trauma reaction where we attempt to control other people. And this can be very subtle because no one wants to see themselves as controlling, right? We know it's a bad thing, but sometimes we do it without realizing it. I've got a video from my archives. This is one of my favorites of all time, and it's about hidden control behaviors that push people away. See what you think. You know who likes it when people are controlling? Nobody. Nobody likes people who are controlling. But when you grew up with trauma, there's this double problem where you end up more likely to be entangled with people who are controlling, and because people around you have so often been out of control, you end up being a controlling person. Now, big obvious forms of control are one thing, but I want to talk about the more subtle forms that control takes. You may not even know you're doing it, or you may not know it's being done to you. All right, so number one, a subtle form of control is outsourcing responsibility. So when people tell you that you have to not trigger them, they are outsourcing responsibility for their healing, right? They might get offended easily. They expect you to remember how sensitive they are about something they haven't healed yet. They make rules about what you can say, who can be invited to events, what food people can eat. All right, that's controlling. And what they're doing, instead of healing themselves and learning to have boundaries themselves, is they're making someone else responsible. So if you're the one doing that, if you feel that you are making excessive rules for people or trying to influence what they say or whether they trigger you, consider pulling that back, taking that control back into yourself and learning to calm your own triggers. And you can set other people free to be themselves. They are more likely to feel great in your presence when that pressure is off of them. All right, the second one is what I call concern shaming. And this is a form of control where people are making little subtle criticisms at you and expressing their doubts basically and how capable you are and your decisions and your actions. And they say, I'm only raising my concern about this, what you eat, what you do, where you work, where you're not working. I'm only raising this because I'm concerned about you. So for a parent to talk to a teenager that way might be appropriate. For peers and adults to talk to each other that way, it's not appropriate. And it's a form of shaming, and it's passive aggressive. And it's controlling. It's trying to influence another person to do what you think they need to do. Believing that you know how another person should live their life is, by definition, a form of arrogance. And when people get that energy of arrogance, it pushes them away. All right? So it's a fine art sometimes of sitting back and admiring people and listening to them and supporting them without trying to influence how they live their life, unless they ask you. And if they ask you, that's another thing. All right? A third form of control in the subtle realm is people who avoid plans and schedules, or they delay everything, they keep rebooking things, saying they're a free spirit, or they're just really busy, or they just forgot to reply, or it must have gone into spam. And basically they're doing that as holding up you or a group from making a plan and carrying on with what they need to do. And that's a really common form of control. It's not cool. Sometimes people with complex PTSD end up being they have a hard time with calendars and schedules and remembering things because of dysregulation. And I acknowledge that, but if you're on the receiving end, it ends up controlling your time. So it's really understandable that it would push people away. It's disappointing for them. It's disrespectful to their time. We all know what it feels like when people do it to us, right? So even though it could be something that's driven by your trauma, it's something you can work on. Another one is what I call controlling with time. And this could be where you cause people to wait all the time by being late for things 45 minutes all the time, or demanding that other people be on the dot or there's going to be hell to pay. If you're their peer, it's not really your place to direct rage and control at them. If you don't like their habits of time, that's another discussion to have. But the controlling aspect of expecting people to meet your demands is one of those things that pushes people away. All right, another one. Controlling with mood, sulking, Everybody has to be quiet. Don't talk to me about your day because I had a bad day. Making you pay an emotional penalty for hurting them in the past, but not communicating directly and not allowing you any pathway towards resolving it. That is controlling with mood. And people don't like it, and it eventually will sort of erode their spirit and push them away. Another form of control is controlling with expectations. They're disappointed when you're not like who they imagined you to be, which is usually, coincidentally, how they are. And I had a friend criticize me not that long ago who said, I just really looked up to you. And what was happening is she saw me like struggling with something in my life and being confused. I was in tears. And it made her angry. She was angry. She goes, this is not who I see you as, Don't you realize I look up to you? And that was a really hurtful thing to say, and I did end up not being friends with her. Good friends encourage and bless all of your efforts to be the best person you can, but they do not attack you for not being who they thought you were, And when people project on others, that's a CPTSD thing. That's often the consequence of rushing into a relationship, idealizing it, or it can be part of the sort of narcissist pattern of idealizing and devaluing. So those are all things I would call controlling with expectations. All right, another form of control is controlling with silence, the silent treatment, refusing to discuss something, walking out, ignoring when somebody's talking to you. That is a particularly aggressive kind of control. It's very hurtful to other people. And there are almost no situations where it's a good idea. If you really need to be not in contact with somebody, you can remove yourself. If you need to discuss something with somebody, it's time to show up for that conversation. If you feel it's not safe or a good time to have that discussion, you say that. You say, I want to discuss this. Right now, I need to take a break until I feel a little more this way, or until we're not angry at each other, or until we have privacy. So showing up and being direct about that is the non-controlling way of setting that boundary, not being silent. All right, another form of control is controlling with sleep. Keeping people waiting because you're tired or you're sleeping. The family's waiting for you. Let's say you're a parent and there's a plan today to go to the park, and you unexpectedly decide to sleep in. The kids are running around and things are getting chaotic, and the other parent is getting stressed out, but you're not getting out of bed. That's a form of control. Most people don't consider that, but it's controlling with sleep. All right, finally, trying to change people is a form of control. And this is a big blanket category. It's so natural to want to change people. And if you grew up with CPTSD, you're often going to have in your life other people who have issues with trauma or self-defeating behaviors, and it's going to mess things up for you. It's going to be painful. This could be stuff like people who have problems with money or anger or drinking, and that's all real, and it might be hard to deal with, but there's a place where we enter into trying to control those people and make them change that becomes really toxic for ourselves and for them. So this is a much deeper subject, but if you find yourself having this idea of somebody who you care about, they would be so much better if they would just da-da-da. It's like we know better than to just like get in their face and go, you should change, I demand you change. We know that's not considered cool. But so then it comes out in these little subtle ways where you're just like, oh, I heard about this book you might like, and magically you bought it and you're pushing it under their face at the dinner table. Or, have you tried, when somebody tells you they're struggling with an addiction or something, have you tried da-da-da, and just assuming that they're asking you for things as if they just said, I don't know what to try. Could you possibly give me some examples of things I could try? Then you would say that. But offering these subtle little things of like pressure to change, it pushes people away. People are really remarkable and capable of making positive changes in their own lives without pressure on them, and a lot of how they do that, and I learned this through a lot of years checking out Al-Anon, which is a really great 12-step program for families of alcoholics, and they taught me a lot about the experience of letting go of trying to change people and being wonderfully surprised at how they just went ahead and conducted their lives anyway, and it was better than it would have been with me pressuring them, because there wasn't just all this friction pushing them away, making things tense, making them feel criticized, making them lash back out at me. I could just let them be themselves, and people will tend to work on themselves. Some people can't change right now, and sometimes the best thing you can do is to offer them love and acceptance and have some boundaries about what you can handle about the situation they're in, but not to keep putting pressure on them. When you are a loving and safe presence for people who struggle, you are more trustworthy and more likely to be the person they come to on the day that they want to say, hey, I need some help. Could you give me some suggestions? And there you will be for them, ready to go. If you think that abuse and neglect in your own childhood may have affected the way that you connect with people, maybe through being controlling or being attracted to controlling people, I have a quiz you can take. I'll put a link to it right below this video in the top of the description section. You can take that quiz. It's got a list of signs and symptoms, and you can check them off and just kind of see, like, do you have a lot of them, just a few of them? And it will help you reflect on whether this is a thing for you that you might want to work on. For working on it, I've got a video lined up for you right here. It's all about how to open up more connection with people, and I will see you very soon.